My family cut me off believing I was not my dad's son, and 3 years later my grandpa revealed the truth, leaving them desperate to reconnect with me. I grew up in a happy household. My parents loved each other deeply, and they loved my siblings and me even more. They were attentive and caring, and they always put us before themselves. My relationship with my parents was particularly good. My dad worked long hours to provide for us, but he always made time for us when he could. He would take us on fishing trips, teach us how to play sports, and tell us stories about his own childhood. My mom, on the other hand, was the glue that held our family together. She cooked delicious meals, helped us with our homework, and made sure that we were always clean and presentable. I loved my parents, and I knew that they loved me too. But my world came crashing down when my parents started fighting. I had always thought of them as the perfect couple. They had been together for as long as I could remember, and they rarely argued. But one day, things changed. It started with small disagreements, but soon the arguments became more frequent and more intense. I tried to ignore them, but they were impossible to ignore. My mom and dad would shout at each other for hours on end, and I could hear every word from my room. One day, I heard my dad admit to having an affair years ago. My mom was livid, and she retaliated by admitting to having an affair of her own. The argument escalated until my dad questioned my paternity. I was stunned. I had never even considered the possibility that he might not be my biological father. My mom was speechless and didn't know what to say. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I could see the guilt and shame on her face. My dad stormed out of the house, and my mom went after him. After that day, everything changed. My siblings took my dad's side and refused to talk to me. They were angry that my parents cheated on each other, but even more so that my mom had cheated on him and that I might not be his biological son. They treated me with hostility and disdain, and I felt like an outsider in my own family. My siblings and I were caught in the middle of their argument, and it was like a bomb had exploded in our house. My mom and dad started to treat each other with hostility, and it wasn't long before their anger spilled over to us. My siblings, who had always been close to me, suddenly turned against me. They blamed me for the fact that our family was falling apart. They said that I was a reminder of my mom's affair, and that I might not even be my dad's biological son. Their words hurt me deeply. I had always thought of us as a tight-knit family, but now it seemed like we were torn apart. My parents were distant and cold, and my siblings were mean and vindictive. I tried to talk to my parents, but they were always busy or distracted. They seemed to be consumed by their problems, and they didn't have time for me anymore. It was like I was invisible to them. As for my siblings, they would avoid me at all costs. They stopped inviting me to their gatherings and stopped talking to me altogether. It was like I didn't exist to them. The rejection was hard to bear, and I didn't know how to cope with it. I felt like I had lost everything: my family, my home, and my identity. I was lost and alone, and I didn't know if I could ever find my way back. At first, I tried to reach out to them. I called and texted my siblings, hoping to talk to them and sort things out, but they never answered. I tried to call my parents too, but they were always busier or out of the house. I was desperate to talk to someone, anyone who could help me make sense of what was happening. So I went to my mom's house, hoping to talk to her. She decided that some separation was much needed, but when I saw her, she told me to go away. She said that I wasn't welcome there, and that I should leave. Her words were like a knife to my heart, and I couldn't believe that my mother would say something like that to me. After that, I spiraled into depression. I didn't know who I was or where I belonged. I felt like a stranger in my skin, and I didn't know how to make it go away. I stopped going to work, stopped hanging out with my friends, and stopped doing the things I loved. I spent most of my days in bed, sleeping or just staring at the ceiling. I didn't eat much, and I lost a lot of weight. Months turned into 1 year, and I thought I would never be able to escape the darkness that had consumed me. I hadn't heard from them in so long. I lived so close to them, but I was still so far away. My siblings and I were usually at our parents' house all the time. I missed them. I'd been so consumed with my pain that I hadn't realized how much my friends had been there for me all along. They would call me, check up on me, and invite me out to do things. At first, I didn't want to. I was content to wallow in my misery, but eventually I started to go out with them. We would go to the movies, grab some food, or just hang out at home. They made me feel like I wasn't alone, and for that, I was grateful. I started to focus on my own well-being, seeking out therapy and support groups to help me cope with the pain of being rejected by my family. My friends were a constant source of support during this time, and I reached out to them more than ever. At first, I was hesitant to talk about what had happened with my family. I was embarrassed and ashamed. But as time went on, I found that talking about it with my friends helped me process my feelings and move forward. They listened without judgment, offering words of comfort and encouragement. I also found solace in hobbies and activities that brought me joy. I started to play guitar again, something that I had put aside when my depression took hold. I found that playing music helped soothe my soul and provided an outlet for my emotions. As I started to take better care of myself, I noticed a gradual improvement in my mental health. The sadness and despair that had once consumed me began to lift, and I started to think about the future, about my future. My friends were there for me every step of the way, cheering me on and providing a shoulder to lean on when things got tough. They reminded me that I was not alone and that I had people who loved and cared for me, even if my family didn't. Update 1. One day, a few years later, out of the blue, my grandpa reached out to me. He said that he had had enough of the way my family had treated me, and he wanted to make things right. He convinced me and my father to do a paternity test, and despite my initial hesitation, I fully agreed. I didn't want to get back into that murky situation again, but I wanted to know the truth. When the results came back positive, my family were flabbergasted. They couldn't believe their mistake. They realized the error of their ways and were remorseful for the pain they had caused me. They knew they had hurt me deeply, and they were desperate to make it right. I remember feeling torn about their sudden change of heart. On the one hand, a part of me was overjoyed that my family wanted to reconcile with me. It was something that I had wanted for so long, and it felt like a dream come true. But on the other hand, I couldn't forget the hurt and betrayal that I had felt when they had abandoned me. Despite their apologies and pleading, I remained hesitant. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive and forget. I had moved on and built a life for myself, and I didn't know if I wanted to let my family back in. I was afraid that history would repeat itself, and I would be left hurt and alone once again. But even as I struggled with my emotions, my family persisted. They called me, sent letters, and my parents even showed up at my doorstep. They begged me to give them a chance to make things right, and they promised to do whatever it took to earn my forgiveness. I remember feeling overwhelmed by their persistence. It was clear that they were truly sorry for what they had done, and that they genuinely wanted to reconnect with me. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were only reaching out to me because they felt guilty. I asked my grandpa how my family had been doing these past 3 years, and he told me that they had gone to therapy, and that my parents were back together again. It hurt me to hear that they had moved on without me, as if I had never existed. It made me feel left out and unwanted. Despite their pleas for forgiveness, I declined to get back in touch with them. I didn't want to reopen old wounds and put myself in a vulnerable position again. I didn't want to risk getting hurt all over again. They dropped me once, they could drop me again. I told them that they could continue without me, like they had all these years. It would make no difference. I had finally found peace and happiness, and I didn't want to let them take that away from me again. I'd found a new family, my friends, and they were the ones who had been there for me every step of the way. Not the a-hole. Family is supposed to support each other no matter what. His family's behavior was incredibly selfish. They didn't care about how he would feel. They only cared about their egos and reputations. They should have never dropped him off and refused to talk to him in the first place. It's selfish and immature to punish someone for something that's not their fault. Would they have reached out to him if the test was negative? They're the a-holes. Next story. My soulmate was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at 32 and passed away less than 2 years after the diagnosis. I was his primary caregiver during his illness and ended up quitting my own job to take care of him full-time for the last 10 months of his life approximately. His treatment was complicated, and keeping him at home required 24-hour care, and it was too much for his parents to manage when I wasn't there. I had to hire a nurse. I loved him with my entire soul and never ever considered not caring for him. It was just normal to me, and his well-being and care took priority over everything else in my life. When he passed, I found myself alone with a car, a dog, and an inn. I had no job, no home. We had been living with his parents until he had to move to the hospice. I hadn't maintained friendships in the city we were in, and I had no family other than his in our city. If there was one topic I was always uncomfortable with, it was his will and how he was to distribute the money from his life insurance policy. He comes from a wealthier family than I. We weren't married, and I was worried that people would think I manipulated him in order to get money. I told him that and asked that he make the decision by himself. He fought this, calling it ridiculous, and said that his family would never think that I was after his money, or that he could even be manipulated. But I was raised in a family where money was an uncomfortable topic anyway, and convinced him to leave me out of his decision. He decided to leave me 60% of the money and 10% to each of his siblings, nothing to his parents. He said I had left my job for him, had no family nearby to help, and no home, and would need help building this back. He also wanted me to pay off my student loan, go back to school and get another degree, and buy a home so I wouldn't have to look for a rental for me and an 80-pound dog. I said, "Don't you think your parents should get some?" And he said that his parents are doing okay, his family has each other, and that I would be the one who would need money. He was confident that people would understand and no one would complain. When he passed, his sister was the executor of his will and asked me if I wanted to give his parents money from the amount he left, since he left them nothing. I said no, because I had asked him, and he had said no and meant for his money to be mine. I love his parents, but he was right. When he passed, I found myself with nothing, just a car, a dog, and an N. Unable to work or think and understand, I would indeed need money to get back on my feet. Am I the a-hole? His sister thinks so. I myself don't know. I feel guilty, and I try to reassure myself by reminding myself that this is what he wanted. Edit. His parents have never asked for money, and other siblings never mentioned it either. They are all angels, and I love them very much. The sister, I trust, is doing what she thinks is best for her family. Edit to please be kind to his sister. Beyond what is happening with the will, she lost her brother, and she's family to me. We don't get along, but I do believe she is a good person trying to look after her family. I'm saying this to reply to folks advising me to report her. I would never do this to his sister. Also, I did get the money. I'm just feeling terrible about it. I feel like an a-hole because the money is a lot more than 2 years of my annual salary when I was working, and I don't know what giving away a little would make much of a difference. Not the a-hole. You sacrificed everything to care for him in his final days. It's now time to build your life with his final gift to you. His family will be okay, and it's honestly none of their business at the end of the day. Not the a-hole. You gave up everything. The parents are fine financially, you are not. I could understand if there was something sentimental, but this is money. He passed away to know that you would be okay and not on the street because of him. Next story. I'm a 33 female, and I have 2 kids, Leslie, 14 female, and Braden, 8 male. Leslie is from a previous relationship with Matt, a 35 male. My husband is Toby, a 33 male. Practically ever since I had her, I've had problems with Leslie and Matt. He's from a well-off family and likes to spend big on her each year. Meanwhile, Toby and I are financially struggling, but try to make Christmas as good as possible for our kids. I was sick for a little bit and asked Toby to go ahead and do the Christmas purchases. I trust him. I thought the expense was high when I saw it on the card, but again, I trust him. So when Toby walked in with the Switch, I was shocked. We didn't have the money for that. Come to find out, he was shocked too. Turns out Leslie grabbed my credit card and purchased a Switch when Toby was buying the stuff for the kids, knowing that it could sneak by. I was furious. I told the story about the Switch to everyone I know. Toby agrees with me that was the right move, but when we sent Leslie to Matt's for Christmas, we started to receive hell. Matt was calling me, saying that I ruined Leslie's Christmas and threatened to sue for the Switch. I said that she was stealing my money, and if it was that big of a deal, he should have bought it for her. But he keeps telling me that she knows that I wouldn't have done enough for her for Christmas, so she had the right to make the move. Toby is sticking by me with this, but Matt is giving me so much hell over it. He's calling me the Grinch and an a-hole. Even Leslie has started texting me, saying that she feels mistreated. Am I the a-hole? Absolutely not the a-hole. She stole your credit card. That's both theft and fraud, and very concerning at 14. Your ex is being a manipulative giant a-hole by using it as an excuse to push your daughter to commit criminal activities because she feels entitled. Frankly, this would be grounds for law enforcement to be involved. If she's doing it there, she may be doing it elsewhere. Not the a-hole. Remind Matt that if he sues with no standing no less, then the courts will have a record of her stealing from you. That should shut him up. As for Leslie, punishment for theft doesn't change if you recover your money. Leslie is now your maiden gardener until she works off the amount she stole. Not the a-hole. I suggest you talk to the local police department and see if someone there is willing to talk to her about credit card fraud. I knew a kid whose parents did that after their other son had stolen their credit card to buy about $600 worth of designer hoodies. This kid was 16 or so at the time, so I don't know if they do it at her age, but, she really seems to need it. And as well, see if they'll write a letter to give to her dad. He seems like he might need a kick in the ass too. Sitting here in my small apartment, staring at the city lights twinkling through the rain-streaked window, I feel like I've finally exhaled after holding my breath for 3 long years. The paternity test results are still folded on my coffee table, a crisp white envelope that holds the truth I've always known deep down but never had the proof to shout from the rooftops. Positive. I'm his son, my dad's son. Not some remnant of a betrayal, not an outsider crashing their perfect family picture. But knowing that doesn't flood me with the joy I thought it might. Instead, it's a mix of vindication laced with a deep, aching sorrow that makes my chest tighten every time I think about it. The betrayal hit me like a freight train that day the arguments exploded. I was just a kid, well, 19, but still feeling like one, hiding in my room while the walls shook with their screams. Hearing Dad question if I was really his, Mom's silence screaming louder than words. It shattered something fundamental in me. I grew up idolizing them. Dad's fishing trips, where he'd ruffle my hair and call me champ. Mom's warm hugs after school, her laughter filling the kitchen. My siblings, God, we were inseparable. Late-night video games, shared secrets, that unbreakable bond. Or so I thought. When they turned on me, blaming me for the family's implosion, it wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. Like I was a stain they could scrub away to make everything clean again. Those first months after they cut me off were a blur of darkness. Mom telling me to leave her house, her eyes cold and distant. That image haunts me. My siblings blocking my calls, avoiding me like I was contagious. I spiraled hard. Depression wrapped around me like a fog I couldn't shake. I lost weight, lost my job, lost myself. Days blended into nights of staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was I not good enough? Not lovable unless I fit their narrative? The pain was physical, a constant knot in my stomach, headaches from crying, a bone-deep exhaustion that made getting out of bed feel impossible. I questioned my entire existence. If my own family could discard me so easily, what was I worth? But slowly, painfully, I clawed my way out. My friends, they became my lifeline. Jake, who dragged me out for coffee when I hadn't left the house in weeks. Sarah, who listened to my rants without judgment, reminding me I wasn't crazy. They didn't try to fix me, they just showed up. We started small, movies, hikes, game nights. I picked up the guitar again, the strings vibrating under my fingers like a heartbeat pulling me back to life. Therapy helped too, unpacking the abandonment, realizing their actions weren't about me but their own mess. I built routines, gym sessions to burn off the anger, journaling to process the grief. For the first time, I focused on me, not proving myself to them, but healing for myself. When Grandpa called, it stirred everything up again. He's always been the steady one, the quiet observer in family chaos. Convincing me and Dad to do the test felt like reopening a wound that had just started to scar. I hesitated. Why now? What if it confirmed their worst fears? But curiosity, or maybe a lingering hope, won out. Waiting for those results was torture. Sleepless nights imagining scenarios, rejection if negative, awkward apologies if positive. When it came back positive, Grandpa's voice cracked on the phone. "You're his son, always have been." The family's reaction? A flood of calls, texts, visits. Mom sobbing on my doorstep, Dad's voice breaking as he said, "We were wrong." My siblings sending messages full of "we miss you and let's start over." It was surreal. Part of me, the kid who craved their love, wanted to run into their arms, forgive everything, pretend the last 3 years were a bad dream. But the stronger part, the one forged in isolation and self-reliance, held back. How could I forget the silence? The birthdays ignored, the holidays alone. They moved on. Therapy, reconciliation, back together like nothing happened, while I pieced myself together from scraps. Hearing from Grandpa how they'd healed without me stung like salt in a fresh cut. They rebuilt their family unit, excluding me as if I was the problem all along. Now, with the truth out, they want me back? It feels convenient, guilt-driven, not genuine love but obligation. I told them no. "You've been fine without me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Keep it that way." Walking away from that conversation, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and freedom, fear of regretting it, of being truly alone forever. Freedom from the cycle of hoping they'd change. I don't hate them. Not anymore. Anger burned hot at first, a fire that nearly consumed me. Now it's embers, residual heat but not destructive. I pity them in a way. Their favoritism toward my siblings, their quickness to blame, it stems from their own pain, their fractured marriage. But that's no excuse. They chose to weaponize it against me. Forgiveness? Maybe one day, but not today. Not when the scars are still tender. Gratitude fills the spaces where resentment used to live. For my friends, who became my chosen family. Late-night talks with Jake about dreams. Sarah's encouragement to pursue that promotion at work. They've shown me what real support looks like. Unconditional, no strings. I've built a life I'm proud of, a steady job, hobbies that light me up. A circle that celebrates me. No more begging for scraps of affection. Sometimes late at night like this, doubt creeps in. What if I let them back? Could we heal? But then I remember the depression, the isolation, the way their rejection nearly broke me. I won't risk that again. They dropped me once, trust is shattered glass. You can glue it back, but the cracks remain. The truth from the test? It's closure, not a bridge. I'm his son biologically, but emotionally, I've outgrown needing their validation. I'm my own person now, resilient, independent, worthy. The pain shaped me, but it doesn't define me. As the rain patters on, I feel a quiet peace. I've chosen myself, and for the first time, that feels enough.